Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to this webinar. I'm John Foulkes. As Sherry says, I'm Microsoft Business Manager here at Softcat. Look after the licensing team, Microsoft licensing team here at Softcat. And joined also by Jack Lewis, who's our senior technical architect within the tech design team here at Softcat. So, without further ado, I think let's kick off. And the aim of the session, the half an hour that we have today, is really to give a high-level overview of Microsoft 365 and what those product suites include, what they contain, and how you can use them, and what the benefits are. Okay, so just moving through the slides. So first of all, what is Microsoft 365? So if I could start by explaining in terms of the lineage, the naming history that Microsoft has used. So it's a suite of products, fundamentally enterprise mobility and security in terms of the security layer, Office 365 in terms of the productivity layer, and Windows Enterprise in terms of the underlying desktop OS. Now, in terms of its history, Microsoft 365 really came into being back in 2014 with what Microsoft called Enterprise Cloud Suite. So Enterprise Cloud Suite was, sorry, just muted myself there. No, back on there. So Enterprise Cloud Suite back in 2014 was really where Microsoft first introduced this suite and where EMNS, Enterprise Mobility and Security, first appeared.
Yeah, and then, sorry, good morning, everybody. It's Jack Lewis here. And then, if I remember rightly, John, did it move to the Secure Productive Enterprise after a bit of a name change, following on from the Cloud Productivity Suite?
That's right, Jack. So ECS back in 2014 was a single product, so a single suite of technology, if you like. That got superseded back in July 2016. So this was then renamed Secure Productive Enterprise, which I think is, we got our heads around it eventually. A bit of a strange concoction of words, if you like, but Microsoft again were trying to impress upon the market and customers the fact that there's a big drive here around security, as well as productivity, as well as the underlying Windows Enterprise Suite. And in terms of where we are today, Microsoft 365 released in July this year, so July 2017, with M365 or Microsoft 365. So that was simply a renaming of what was Secure Productive Enterprise, or SPE, or previously ECS. Yeah,
they've also potentially added a little bit of complexity, which we'll move on into the next slide as well, John, which I'm sure you'll explain with the first line suite and the business suites. But where it was a little simpler before, where there was just the three products, and you had E3 and E5, there's a little bit more complexity. We'll move on to that in the next slide as well.
We will, yeah. But fundamentally, it's worth stating this is all per user licensing, and it's all subscription. So from a customer point of view, you can't own this license. It's different to perhaps the traditional way of purchasing licenses, where you might purchase up front and forget and repurchase, upgrade later. This is a subscription service, and it does entail a number of different services, which Jack and I will go through in the course of the webinar. But it is per user, it's subscription in terms of the licensing model.
Right, John, should we move on to the next slide to show the various kind of editions of Microsoft 365 that exist, and kind of what you get for your money in the various product sets?
Yeah, good shout, Jack. So just moving the slides on. So here's the feature comparison. So in terms of Microsoft 365, but what does this mean? What is Microsoft 365? So as we've said, fundamentally it's a suite of 3 elements, the key elements now within the modern desktop licensing. So that is the security layer within EM&S, it's the productivity layer within Office 365, and it's the underlying Windows Enterprise, or in some cases Windows Pro, we'll come on to that, as the base operating system, all per user, all on subscription. Now, if we look at the different plans, certainly Microsoft's focus is around the M365 E3 and E5 plans. There's also, and this is important to note, there are some other plans, 2 other plans. So Microsoft 365 Business, which has just launched as of the beginning of this month, and also Microsoft 365 F1. So not to be confused with Formula One, this is Frontline. So what was originally kiosk or previously deskless workers, we now have a Microsoft suite that includes and addresses that type of user. So perhaps medical staff, factory workers, people who are frontline within a business but don't necessarily have the bigger requirements.
Employees as well, John. So it is a very, very, very large catchment area. There were some figures at Ignite that were announced when they spoke about M365 first line. It's targeted at a very, very, very large group of users. Anybody who has no need perhaps for traditional Office apps or the Win32 versions of the Office apps, but still requires a little bit of email, a little bit of Office 365, whether it be SharePoint access or OneDrive access, and they still want access to a Windows 10 desktop with some of the cut down features of enterprise mobility and security, just so that IT feels comfortable that even though they're not accessing these services as much as an E3 or an E5 user, they're still having to meet certain criteria in order to access the services, because they might contain some sensitive data. So, the numbers are quite massive. I was a little bit taken back when the numbers at Ignite were announced, the amount of people that this could potentially be targeted at.
Yeah, it's a good point, Jack. So if I can just delve into the feature comparison here in a bit more detail and what this really means. If we look at the top layer, that's the Office 365 productivity suite. So bear in mind these components can be bought separately, but in true Microsoft fashion, if you bundle them together, it's more cost effective and easier to manage from a licensing point of view. Within M365 E3 and M365 E5, the Office suite is Office 365 Pro Plus, together with the well-known now traditional productivity services around Exchange, SharePoint, Skype for Business, Yammer, Delve, Power Apps, Flow, Sway is all there within the suite. We'll come on to that in a bit more detail a little bit later on. Worth noting, it's an important note, in terms of those M365 E3 and M365 E5 suites, they do provide dual use rights or hybrid use rights. This is specific to Exchange, SharePoint and Skype for Business. So where as a customer you may well have a need to support a hybrid working environment, so you've got on-prem Exchange, SharePoint, Skype for Business servers, as well as using potentially those cloud services as well, then these Office 365 entitlements within the M365 E3 and E5 plans essentially give you the traditional CAL entitlements for Exchange, SharePoint and Skype for Business. So not just the standard CALs, but the enterprise CALs as well are included.
We also see that in the EM&S suite of products as well, John, so a lot of customers will use that entitlement for SCCM, so you get the SCCM CALs as well as part of EM&S E3 and E5, I believe. So we see a lot of customers using that as a way of becoming compliant with the config manager license, because it does require SA now if you're going to go down the current branch route, which most customers will be doing if they're looking to manage Windows 10 devices for their enterprise.
Yeah. Also on certain programs, certainly all programs bar CSP, actually Cloud Solutions Provider, the M365 E3 and E5 suites actually include the Exchange, SharePoint and the Skype for Business server licenses as well. So providing all users connecting to those servers on-prem are M365 licensed, either E3 or E5, then you've got those included. So the background here, the history here was this is since the Secure Productive Enterprise release, so after ECS in terms of that history, that lineage, so 2016 with the SPE release, Secure Productive Enterprise, in terms of the potted history, there was a simplification pilot that Microsoft ran in the States, whereby Microsoft were going out to customers and saying, actually, we recognize that our licensing agreements and constructs and everything else are fairly complicated and difficult to apply in real-world situations, so we want to address that. So hence, nowadays, if you are looking, and this is the right-hand side of the comparison chart, the pink and the green columns, those include both those CALs and as well as the server licenses themselves for Exchange, SharePoint, Skype for Business.
Yeah, and I think the important thing to keep in mind as well, though, John, is that Microsoft want you to move to this as-a-service model because it's beneficial to them, because it means that you're always going to have access to the latest products and you're going to give them more money on a regular basis, I guess. But it also means that you guys are entitled, as Microsoft customers, to the latest versions as well. Now, whether you're consuming Exchange Online or Exchange as a cloud service or Exchange on-premises, it just means you've got the flexibility to choose your own path.
Yeah.
I think one of the key things as well is that through this licensing simplification, the technologies such as Autopilot and Windows 10s and other pieces of technology that have been announced recently have been able to be produced by Microsoft. Under the old ECS licensing agreements and some of the old things, this stuff might not have been possible. So they've had to rework the licensing, simplify things, so that customers can then move to perhaps user provisioned licensing for Windows 10, for example. So rather than installing Mac keys and KMS keys, which is a little bit static, let's be honest, and requires some kind of IT intervention, assign a Windows 10 license, like an Office 365 license, then automatically upgrade the Windows 10 Pro to Windows 10 Enterprise. So that the kind of the license simplification and the fact that end users just have access to this stuff because you've purchased it in an as-a-service model means that the technology can then support it.
Yeah, I see we've got a couple of questions which I'm happy to address now. So from David, what about E1? Really good question. So there isn't an M365 E1 plan. You may want to look at M365 Business or potentially even First Line. But in terms of if you've got E1 already, you're licensed for E1. If you want to build that M365 suite, you'd build it with the components. So you'd include then Windows Enterprise and EM&S. EM&S, which we're coming on to, essentially comes in at the higher editions, two flavors, E3 or E5. So you could build it that way. Microsoft don't actually offer a suite that is, if you like, M365 E1. Richard's question, can you run both? So could we have a small on-prem Exchange environment due to security as well as cloud? Absolutely, yes, you can. And that's really the intention here from Microsoft, is that the licensing shouldn't hinder the way you use the technology. And Microsoft recognize that a lot of customers typically have got a hybrid environment. So you're maintaining on-prem as well as using cloud services. And if you're using cloud services, you're not going to go big bang either. You probably want to stage that in terms of the uptake of that use and the provisioning of that use and the migration required to do that. So thanks, Richard. Yeah, that question answered, I guess, isn't it?
Spot on, John.
So M365 Business, just touching on that, so this is on the left-hand side of the grid, so the orange header. This, as I said, released to market just this month, so 1st of November. It was available preview trials to certain customers, but not widely. So it is new. It's available. It's only available on CSP. I think I touched on CSP earlier. I appreciate a lot of customers on this webinar now will be CSP customers, I'm sure, already. But essentially, this is a monthly billing model where you've got support from our operations center, 24/7, and also enhanced support offerings as well. That we can add on top in terms of managing your Office 365 entitlements. That's done all through ECAT as well, so it's self-service in terms of managing those license entitlements and the billing platform here at Softcat is all integrated with APIs back to Microsoft and to your Office 365 admin console. But essentially, M365 Business is CSP only. Bear in mind, this includes Office 365 Business Premium as an Office 365 suite, so that's also limited at a tenant level to 300 users. So no more than 300. You can mix and match, by the way, these different plans. So if you wanted, and this is likely for a lot of customers, you may want M365 E3 for a core number of users, but you recognise that first line is going to be a really good shout for a lot of users within your organisation. So you could mix and match, or maybe have M365 E5 for some. You could have M365 Business as well mixed in there. Bear in mind it's a different Office product within that suite. So
John, there's a couple more questions.
Yeah.
That are probably more your bag than mine.
So are Microsoft offering Windows 10 Pro and Windows 10 Enterprise licenses with different subscriptions? Yes, they are. But we'll come on to it a little bit later. We highlight it here because if you look at the suites, this is Aaron's question, if you look at the suites, then actually Windows 10 is included, but you don't necessarily get Windows 10 Enterprise. The way you do, and this is the first one I'm looking at particularly, you've got some of those features within the traditional Enterprise, Windows 10 Enterprise product removed, and also within Business it's just Pro, and again it's a special, it's really a very particular distribution of Pro that's included within Business. So of course you can buy Windows standalone. You can do that through CSP or through other volume license agreements as a standalone per user subscription if you don't want to buy it as part of these suites that you see here. But equally they're included, or as I say, separate through different agreements. It depends on the agreement type, and of course you can buy per user subscriptions, or you can buy still Windows on the traditional per device model, either as an upgrade license or with software assurance, depending on the type of agreement that you're buying on.
And Aaron, there will be some more clarification as we move through the slides later. So we'll make sure these slides are available as well. But essentially, this is the page that we'll probably zip back to a couple of times.
Yeah.
That tells you what you get if you purchase first line or E3. Sorry, John.
No, don't worry, Karen.
And then as we move through the other slides, you'll see what Office 365 F1 includes versus E3, and the same for Windows 10 Enterprise E3 versus E5. We've also got a small section on Windows 10 S as well, which is kind of out of the scope of all of this because it's an OEM build at present, but it does fit in quite nicely with first line. But go on, John. Sorry, do you want to just
No, that's fine. Yeah, just final question from David. So if you have E1s already, yes, you could buy EMS separately. You can step up to E3. It depends on the program that you're buying on. So I'd be happy to take that offline as a follow-up directly, David, if you wanted to. There's ways of doing it, either stepping up to the suite, the different suites that you see here, or potentially swapping out, depending on what you want to do. But happy through the normal channels, via your account manager and myself, happy to look at that, your specific scenario. And another one from Aaron. You're currently subscribed with Microsoft 365, Windows license is part of the subscription. Does M365 change from the current Office subscription we currently use? So it depends what you're currently using, Aaron. In fact, let's just move on just to help answer that question. In terms of the Office 365 suite, so this is Office 365, M365, Microsoft 365 is the suite. Office 365 is the productivity layer, and it's a suite in itself, but combined into when you buy the M365 suite. Okay, so you've got Business Premium. Yeah, so Business Premium, you can. There aren't means to step up. You could swap out Business Premium to Microsoft 365 Business if you wanted to. That you won't have Windows licenses included in Business Premium. You'd have to buy the suite. You can, as I said earlier, you can buy Windows licenses separately if you want to. In terms of Office, a couple of things to call out here. Fundamentally, in E3 and E5, you've got the same Office products of Office 365 Pro Plus. Within the F-Plan F1, you don't have any local install of Office. It's just Office Online. So browser-based Office. If it's the business plan, then it's Office 365 Business Premium, Aaron, as you've got there. So fundamentally, I appreciate everyone will know this, but these are different products. In terms of the interface, the suite is now the same between Business Premium and E3E5, Business Premium, Office 365 Pro Plus.
There's some missing features, aren't there, John?
Yeah, there are some missing features. In terms of, for example, any network usage of Office, if you're using Citrix Terminal Services, then you do need to be licensing and using Office 365 Pro Plus rather than Business. Some of the rights management and DLP aspects related to Outlook, for example, won't work, aren't supported with Business.
You can use some to access an archive as well, an online archive on the standard versions of Office. I don't know if that's still the case.
I'm not sure it is actually. Yeah, I'm not.
It's a bit of a showstopper if you.
Yeah, that's it. Often we see that it's the network usage of Office that can be the showstopper and actually drives customers towards Office 365 Pro Plus. Business now includes Access since the start of this year, so in terms of the applications, you've got parity, but in terms of how that's used, it's a little bit different. So it's local install, of course, and both Office Business and Office 365 Pro Plus, you can now install up to 15 devices, so 5 PC and Mac, 5 phones, 5 tablets. Microsoft is very much in this supporting this multi-device, cross-platform strategy, real-world strategy in terms of how customers, how users ultimately need to be productive and use Office applications and the rest of the suite. In terms of the differences, and we'll highlight this when we see the prices later on as well. I'm going to slide on that a little bit later. But if you look at E5, this is where essentially it's the advanced services that you have within Office 365 E5. So this is certainly sat here is Microsoft's phone service, PSTN phone service emanating from Microsoft Data Center. So that cloud PBX is included within E5, as is PSTN conferencing. So PSTN conferencing within Skype for Business, as well as the phone service, as well as advanced e-discovery and analytics within E5, as well as things like Power BI Pro, Customer Lockbox. So
advanced retention seems to be a big one as well at the moment.
Yeah,
so
good shout. Yeah,
the fact that you can literally say that all data must be retained for 7 years, and then after 10 years, all data that expires, hasn't been accessed for 10 years or whatever it might be, must be removed. If customers do have some kind of compliance criteria or whatever it might be, for some contractual reasons, they've got to retain data or remove data after a certain period of time, the advanced retention policies can make your life really easy. Now you can, using some creative kind of shared mailboxes and legal hold, achieve something similar in the Exchange world. But from a larger organisation perspective, it wouldn't be practical. You'd need to have spreadsheets left, right, and centre to keep track of how long something's been retained for. So the advanced retention is a really good feature, actually, and really simple to configure. There are also ways where you can turn it on and then it can't be switched off. So if you've got a contract that requires that, when we've said that we're going to retain data for this period, there's anything to do about it. Office 365 Advanced Retention does support that.
Yeah. Thank you, Jack. In the interest of time, I'm just going to move on to the next slide. Please, audience, fire away with any questions into the dialog box if you have them. In terms of EM&S, so Enterprise Mobility and Security, fundamentally, E3 and E5 are the ones that Microsoft certainly focus on. Yes, they are included, or elements of EM&S is included within the F1 and the business plans, but it is certainly cut down. If we focus, for the purposes of the presentation, on E3 and E5 EM&S, fundamentally E3, and that's the bottom layer here in pink, this combines essentially identity management through Azure Active Directory Premium Plan 1, together with rights management services in the likes of SharePoint, file shares and documents wherever you keep them within Azure Information Protection P1. Also Intune in terms of device management and application management, and that becomes key when you tie that together with the likes of Azure AD Premium and also information protection as well, because not only are you managing a user's identity, but you can manage the type of device they use, and you can enroll devices into Intune. So you've got corporate visibility, IT visibility, and management of those devices, as well as what that user can use in terms of applications, access to certain applications, depending on the device they're using, depending on their location, for example, depending on who they are within the organisation. And that's mirrored with advanced threat analytics as well. So that essentially profiles what users do on the network typically. So if I log on in London from a device, and then 5 minutes later I'm logging on in Edinburgh with the same credentials, then advanced threat analytics will alert you as IT to that. It could also force some things that for me as a user have to do, because the likelihood is my credentials have been compromised. So it may force a password reset or force MFA multi-factor authentication actually being an Azure AD premium service, or it just may just tell me to not even go any further. But of course, together with the likes of Intune, we can manage the device I'm using as well, and actually, depending on the device I'm using, if it's enrolled in Intune, we can say, well, actually, this is either a corporate device or it's a personal device, and actually we can apply policies to that device in terms of what I can do. So if it's my personal iPad, let's say, I haven't got the same level of access as I have if it's a corporate laptop to services and applications on the network.
Yeah, spot on. And just for clarity, this slide is in everything and. So if you purchase E3, you get all the bits in pink. You purchase E5, you get all the bits in pink and all the bits in green as well that are inside E5. So it's not that you just don't get Intune if you purchase E5. I know it's pretty poorly represented on this, but yeah, it's an everything and a lot of our other slides which we'll move through are of a similar nature. You purchase the free, you get the bit. And you purchase the basic, you then get all the features of the free and basic, so that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And just touching on cloud app security, so looking at EMNS E5, and certainly from experience, customers who have purchased EMNS E5 rather than E3 are doing so because of cloud app security particularly. So what that does is Microsoft have identified and enrolled, I think, something like 15,000, if not more, SaaS applications within the service. So the likes of Box, Dropbox, Salesforce, non-Microsoft SaaS applications, typical that organisations will use, but can't necessarily control or manage in a traditional IT sense because they fall outside of the firewall and are otherwise difficult to manage from a compliance perspective. So cloud app security does that assessment in terms of risk, compliance, auditory compliance, and collects data from firewalls and proxies. So you know who's using these different applications, and you can actually assign a risk score and actually set policies and enforce them as well. So not only do you know what people are doing, but you can actually force policies on what people can do with these different applications, and obviously report on these kind of these things as well. And as I say, assess risks against the use of these different services, SaaS services. So it's one that probably doesn't get shouted about enough, and one that we'd really welcome any interested customers. If you want to look at this in more detail, cloud app security and how that could help your business, certainly with the likes of GDPR approaching next year. It's these elements, the likes of cloud app security, together with the security features within Windows 10 Enterprise that are driving adoption of these more premium technologies from Microsoft.
Yeah, and we are going to cover cloud app security and identity-driven security models and security in a cloud world, because you can't put a firewall around these services, so you need to adopt a new approach. The concept of putting a firewall around Office 365 doesn't exist. We're going to cover that in the final webinar, which Cherie will confirm what the date is, because I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. But the Microsoft Cloud App Security is a CASB solution, so it's going to provide IT with visibility of the SaaS applications that are being used by your end users, and it allows you to control access into those as well. So you can have a look, and if there's a lot of traffic going to a SaaS application that doesn't meet any compliance criteria, that it looks to be kind of a risky one, it doesn't have ISO 27001, you can then you can act on that information, whether it be shut it down at the firewall level or perhaps proxy the traffic through Azure AD Premium, which is a new feature that was announced at Ignite. So really, really, really powerful. Yeah. Myself and John both feel that this is going to be real, really important over the next few years. That the CASB market is going to explode because there is a lot of SaaS usage out there. I'm sure we all know this as IT guys. It's difficult to control. This just gives the power back to the IT department. So it's not about hindering end user productivity of staff and creativity. It's about allowing them to use the services provided they meet certain criteria. And we retain control. And that might be that you require multi-factor auth, or they've got to be on an enrolled device before they access Salesforce. And if they access Salesforce, they're not allowed to download a load of sensitive documents on an unenrolled device. Whatever it might be, those kind of solutions are going to be key in allowing organizations to secure that cloud world. But we will cover that in more depth in the final session.
Yeah, and just very quickly, Aaron, a C question. Add-ons, depending on the agreement type you've got, likely that's an enterprise agreement. Happy to have that follow up. Yeah, if you want to contact your Softcat account manager, I'm happy to join that discussion as well, Aaron. So, conscious of time, and we're going to run over a little bit, but as your Active Directory additions, and I'm going to lean on Jack a little bit here for your bigger brain, if you don't mind, Jack, to perhaps just run through this.
Yeah, sure thing. I'll just run through this very quickly. So just some of the main features. So again, it's another everything and table. So if you purchase basic, you get everything free. You purchase premium P1, you get everything basic and free. EM&S E3 includes premium P1. EM&S E5 includes premium P2. Premium P1 gives you access to unlimited federation, so you can federate with as many SaaS apps as you'd like, which is key to control access in the cloud world. So, the identity-driven security model, we need to control access into the SaaS applications that exist outside of our data center. The way to do that is to federate them with an identity provider. So there's no single sign-on limit with P1. P1 also gives you access to multi-factor authentication and access to an on-premises multi-factor authentication server, which we use at Softcat. So for example, if your organization uses ADFS to authenticate into Office 365, and you've got some VPNs or something else like a NetScaler, for example, on premises that you would like to bolster security by requiring a multi-factor authentication, we can do that because we've got rights to do that here with the on-premises MFA server rights. There's a lot of self-service stuff. Again, we'll send this across, and if you've got any further questions, just let us know. But there's things like self-service group access, self-service password reset. App proxy is a really cool feature. So think of it as like a TMG replacement, but rather than performing the pre-authentication at the TMG on premises, you perform that pre-authentication at Azure AD. The applications get listed in the My Apps portal so that you can access on-premises apps, but leverage the additional security controls that are provided by Azure AD. Conditional access is key in this world. So we federate the applications with Azure AD. We then put conditions so that you have to jump through certain hoops in order to access the application. And those don't need to be too intrusive. It might be that you've got to be on an enrolled device or a domain joined device. And if you're on an enrolled device, you've got to have encryption turned on. And if you're outside the network, you've got to do a multi-factor authentication. Key differences between Premium P1 and Premium P2. P2 includes a feature called identity protection, which I always describe as the feather in the cap. So very quickly, because we're going to cover this in the final webinar, it utilizes something called the Intelligent Security Graph, and I'd encourage everybody on the webinar to look up the Microsoft Intelligent Security Graph. It essentially contains information from 13 billion access requests that are performed every day to Microsoft through Microsoft's identity management solutions. It feeds in data from the Digital Crimes Unit, so they know about malicious IPs, they know about stolen credentials, malware-infected devices, and as you can imagine, that allows them to build. That's a lot of data, so they can do a lot of intelligent analytics to look for patterns of attacks or look for unusual behaviour. They will also, provided you've got the P2 license, learn what is normal behaviour. So they will know that John logs in from Manchester, and John logs in from London, and John logs in from his home in Buckinghamshire on a regular basis. If John logs in from Marlow, and then 5 hours later he logs in from Edinburgh, it is physically possible to travel to Edinburgh in 5 hours, but it's outside of what is considered normal behaviour for John. So what it might do is it might raise the risk that's associated with his identity from low to medium. And then identity protection allows you to do risk-based conditional access based on the information that is in the Intelligent Security Graph. So if that If John's identity raises to medium, it might ask him to do a multi-factor authentication. If it raises to high, i.e. he logs in from an IP address in Russia 5 seconds after he's logged in from London, it might block access to his account, notify IT, get him to reset his password next time he logs on. So it's a way of automating that level of protection, adding a little bit of intelligence in, and also reducing something called MFA fatigue. Some of you might have seen this before. If you turn on multi-factor authentication, you tend to get a lot of complaints from users. It's a necessary evil because we need to protect access into these services. The problem is that you log on in the morning, you get asked for multiple multi-factor authentication requests because Outlook asks for its own, Office 365 might ask for its own, another application might ask for its own, your phone in your pocket might ask for one. It can be a little bit intrusive. We can remove that MFA fatigue by adding intelligence into it. So we'll cover that in the final webinar in more details. And privileged identity management is a way of not giving global admin access to everybody all of the time, which is a great thing. You know, we'll only give you access, just enough access, just when you need it, and then we'll revoke it retrospectively. So just reduces that attack surface.
Yeah, very good, Jack. So I'll just move on the slides. We've got a couple more. So information protection additions. I guess we've touched on this already a little bit, haven't we, Jack?
We have, yeah. So information protection is a really cool feature. So again, another everything and table. So rights management service, the one that's included in Office 365 E3, I think it is the minimum one. John, you can confirm that. You essentially get access to RMS template. So RMS is a way of applying file level protection to a document, for example. So you can say that the only people that can open this sensitive document is John and Jack from Softcat, and it's encrypted, and they need to use an RMS enlightened application to open this. If, for example, it's then copied up to Dropbox or copied to a USB key, because the encryption is applied to the file and the rights are actually reside on the file as well, if somebody else gets hold of that USB key and tries to access the file, they'll be asked for credentials to authenticate, and then they'll just be told, unfortunately, you're not able to access this, you're not on the list. AIP P1 and P2 also include classification tools. So they're only available for Windows at the moment. They don't work on Mac. But that apparently is coming soon if you check user voice. But essentially, you can classify data. So end users will create data. P1's user initiated, so somebody will create a document and they'll classify it based. It might be personal, or it might be commercial in confidence, or it might be highly confidential. Those classifications can then invoke an RMS template as well. So if somebody applies highly sensitive classification, it could then apply a template that means that only Softcat employees can open it, for example. That means that if it's copied to Dropbox, it doesn't matter because you still retain control over that data if it's copied to a USB key. And it means that you can securely share information both inside your organization and outside your organization. P2, the key feature is that the protection is automated. So you can use DLP criteria so that if it contains things like, if a Word document contains credit cards and the end user saves it, it will automatically classify it. And you've got full control over it. As a result of the classification, you could then apply an RMS template. At the moment, the classification requires you to save the document, and then the AIP add-in will say, oh, sorry, there's some credit cards, so we'll apply this classification. In the next release of the client, so the preview client at the moment, it will do it supposedly as the user types. I've yet to get my hands on that, but I believe that's definitely in the release notes. So that's quite cool. So the user can see if they've violated certain DLP and it's had an impact, so it's applied a classification. They'll see that in real time, which should be quite cool. There are also some hold your own key bits, but we'll send some information after the call on that to the attendees so they can look at that in their own time.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks. Okay, just moving the slides on. And again, Jack, I think you perhaps certainly touched on this already in terms of identity-driven security, but anything to add?
Yeah, the key thing is that ATA, so Advanced Threat Analytics, that's included in E3, is an on-premises solution. There is Azure ATA, which is in preview, which kind of does the same thing, but this version that we are looking at here is Microsoft Advanced Threat Analytics. It essentially sits in your data center and port mirrors all of your DC traffic to build a profile of your end users. What are they accessing? Where are they accessing? What is the normal computer that they log on? Bring that intelligence from the cloud into your on-premises data center so that you can spot and prevent advanced attacks like pass the ticket attacks. It will also report on port configuration, which is really useful. So if you've got applications that are communicating with domain controllers using LDAP rather than LDAP to S, or they are submitting credentials over plain text, it will report on that and it'll say, look, you should really address this, because if somebody is able to sniff the network traffic, they're going to get access to all those credentials. Yeah, really cool solution. The one thing I will say about it is that the resource requirements are absolutely gigantic. Just go in with your eyes open, that you need to throw quite a lot of CPU, disk, and RAM resources to make this work, because it has to listen to all of that traffic and it has to do, you know, intelligent analysis on it. So yeah, it does require a lot of resource. Cloud App Security we've covered already, but it is a CASB solution. Myself and John both feel that this is both going to the CASB market's going to gather momentum over the next year or so. So yeah, we'll cover that in the final webinar.
Yeah. And just final couple of slides. I appreciate we are running over on time, so wanting to respect everybody's time that has been given. But very quickly on the Windows 10 editions, Jack, I don't know if you just want to fly through that very quickly, if you would.
Yeah, so this isn't an everything on sale, because the first one is a standalone SKU. Everything after that, so Windows 10 Enterprise E3 includes everything that's included in Windows 10 Pro, and Enterprise E5 includes everything in E3 and Pro. Windows 10S was announced not too long ago alongside the Surface laptop. It's essentially a cut-down version of Windows 10 where you can install only store applications, so universal Windows platform applications. It's designed for speed and security, so it should run quick from the get-go and stay quick, because we're not going to install a load of Win32 apps that will clog up the registry. A lot of traditional malware won't actually affect machines that are in Windows 10S. It's targeted at those first-line workers. So the idea being that they take a device out of the box, you use Autopilot to automatically provision the device and join it to your on-premises, the Azure version of Active Directory. You push down configuration using an MDM, Intune, AirWatch, something along those lines, and the IT intervention is very minimal. It's supposed to be a way of injecting pace into your remote workers or your workers that interact directly with customers that don't perhaps need access to any kind of Win32 applications. Really cool. Pro, Windows 10 Pro, I guess the big thing here is that, for those that don't know, it also includes BitLocker and access to other things like Windows information protection. Enterprise E3 also includes access to, I would say Microsoft has been a little bit naughty here, but there are some advanced security features that you are entitled to, things like Credential Guard, Device Guard, App Guard, which now have new names. They all fall under the Defender brand, so Windows Defender. But they're designed to protect against these advanced attacks, so credential theft, those kind of things. You also get access to the MDOT, which includes MBAN. Now, one of the things that we are seeing in the Windows 10 world is that more and more customers are moving to BitLocker for their full disk encryption solution. The reason being that the feature updates and third-party disk encryption solutions don't tend to play very nice. We'll cover this in the next session, which is about Windows as a service. But access to the MDOT gives you access to MBAN, which then allows you to provide self-service and a secure way of storing the BitLocker recovery keys with rotation of those keys as well. Additionally, the big killer feature for end user is the control end user experiences. So if you want to force users to the Windows Store for Business, it requires an enterprise license if you want to control that using group policy or MDM. Also, if you want to control things like the start menu from group policy or MDM, you're going to need enterprise versions of Windows. There are obviously a whole host of other features as well, like the fact that you can reduce the amount of telemetry that's sent to Microsoft, although we would not encourage that where possible. E5 includes Defender ATP, which until recently was a post-breach detection and investigation tool. It was agentless. It sent a lot of telemetry data up to Microsoft and notified you if an attack occurred, how did it occur, and what mines have been affected. So things like cross-process injection, escalation of privileges, memory attacks, that sort of thing. It wasn't a replacement for an advanced anti-malware solution like Cylon, Sophos, something like that. And Defender that is built into the OS, so Defender, the anti-malware solution is signature-based. So that isn't able to protect against zero-day attacks. It needs to know the signature. With the latest version of Windows 10, Defender ATP is a response tool as well. So the latest version of Windows 10 released last month, so it's still in its infancy, but from what we've seen, this could potentially be a tool that in the future could be used as your advanced anti-malware solution, although it is still in its infancy at the moment. But I've said for a little while, and I think John will agree, that E5 from an enterprise Windows 10 perspective has been a tough sell for a little while just because it was post-breach. But the fact that they've also included some response features now so that you can protect against these zero-day attacks makes it a little bit more attractive.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. So, as Jack said, we have got a more in-depth session. Perhaps when he registered, you may have seen that this is a series of 3 webinars. So we've got a second webinar and a third where we will be delving into particularly the security features within EMNS and Windows Enterprise in more detail. So just finally from me, in terms of pricing, just to give some context in terms of how the M365 suites rank in terms of price. RRP pricing is displayed here, so that's ex-VAT RRP, as I say, so volume discounts do apply, but just gives you that context in terms of how the prices play out through the different suites. And question from Chitra, I represent a small charity. I've Enterprise E2 and E3. Call to discuss. Yeah, that's fine. Chitra, if you want to perhaps direct that via your account manager, we can set up that call. Okay, so that is the webinar through and completed. If there are any quick questions, we did promise an open Q&A. Okay, Chitra, you don't have an account manager. We'll make sure you're contacted directly. Not a problem. Okay, so great. Before we close, any questions from the audience?
So we've got a question from Kevin Maxwell in the chat window, John, about F1 plan.
Okay, I can't see that.
Okay, I'll read it out. So does the F1 plan cover everything previously in the K1 plan, plus the EMS kiosk license? And is it still limited to non-qualified users only, i.e. not using qualified devices?
Quick answer there is what it includes. So yes, F1 is a renaming of the old K1, which was deskless worker originally when that was released. There was certainly early this year, February, March, Microsoft beefed up what you got within K1 and now called F1. So with Office 365 F1, they included Office 365 video, some Skype for Business capability around presence and meetings, Power Apps and Flow, Teams, and also Staff Hub. So they are there within F1, and that retails RRP at £3 per user per month. If you take then that as the M365 suite, yes, you've got some EMNS capability, but it is cut down. You don't have information protection. In fact, let's just go back to that slide very quickly. So slide 3. So in terms of first line, and there are, as you see, just some caveats here in terms of what you get. EMNS E3, yes, but in terms of first line, you don't have AIP or the SCCM client management license. So, question from Tom, did I hear that right? And that SCCM licensing is included in one of the levels. Yes, it is. So the SCCM client license is included within EMNS E3 and E5. You don't get it within first line, but it is included within business. So that's part of the EMS suite. Also worth noting that within the first line suite and the business suite, you can't separate out that EMNS suite component and buy that separately. What you get there is part of the suite only. So if you are taking the route of buying EMNS as a separate suite, it's available only as EMNS E3 and EMNS E5. Right, question from Richard. Just to be clear, if you have M365 E5, it is fully practical to have a fully MS Cloud business now. Don't even need an on-prem AD and hence DC. Correct. Yeah, you don't have to. You can run Active Directory purely from Azure, so you could be absolutely a cloud-only customer if you wanted to be.
Yeah, and we speak to a lot of customers about this now who don't have traditional IT presence that have perhaps grown in the last year or so. We get asked to articulate benefits of putting in an on-premises Active Directory and putting in on-premises solutions versus simply moving to an as-a-service model where you pay monthly for them. And they are a tough sell because it's difficult to articulate any benefits if you are in that SaaS world. So as an organisation, if you are consuming SaaS services already, and there's no need for you to have an on-premises legacy application support, for example, then perhaps it would be more beneficial to just go directly to the cloud. That, of course, depends on compliance risk criteria. If you've got some customers and you've signed a contract that require you to keep data inside your data centers, then moving to the cloud is not going to work. But yeah, it is practical, but obviously individual cases will differ.
And I would see many businesses doing that. Some certainly. I think it depends on your business and how established you are in terms of your IT footprint to date. Certainly for greenfield sites and for brand new businesses, yeah, certainly this is an option that's certainly considered and being adopted by customers. Sorry, now the chat window I can't see, but I think that there was a question again. Was it from Neil?
Let me just have a quick look. So it's just it's another one from Kevin Maxwell, just asking about the non-qualified user part of the question.
So yeah, within the scope of an enterprise agreement, if that's Kevin, I don't see your question. If it's F1, Office 365 F1, then yeah, that doesn't constitute a qualified user. It's only the enterprise plans that qualify as constitute as a qualified user. I hope that answers your question.
And then Richard just asked another question. Richard, I'd be keen to actually set up a call with yourself and your account manager, because it depends on the application itself. So if it is a legacy application that supports something like claim-based authentication, you would federate that with Azure AD, and your authentication source would be Azure AD at that point, even if it resides in your data center. If it requires something like Kerberos or some kind of legacy authentication protocol, that can be a little trickier, but there are ways around it. So we will find out who your account manager is, and we'll arrange a follow-up call with myself and your account manager, and we'll discuss that in more detail, just so we can work on a specific scenario for you guys. It sounds like you've obviously got a very specific scenario. We know a little bit about the application. We might be able to just provide the correct advice there, or more specific advice.
Good. I think unless there's any last-minute questions, we should wrap up. Thank you, everybody, for being flexible with time. Appreciate we've overrun. I think that's just testament to the relevance of this topic. I'm happy to do individual follow-ups, as we say. We've certainly had some specific asks here from people on the webinar, but generally, as a general output here, very happy through the normal channels. If you want to contact your Softcat account manager, then Jack and I are very happy, as we're saying, to do these follow-up discussions with you in person and do some specific discussions aligned to your own scenarios as customers. So thank you very much. I think we'll close the webinar now.